So grateful, so honored to introduce Tony Cho, the founder of Cho Ventures, Future of Cities, Metro One Commercial Real Estate, and the Climate and Innovation Hub in Little Haiti. He is widely recognized as an impact entrepreneur that's focused on equitable, inclusive, and sustainable urban ecosystems, regeneration, and community enrichment. He's also the founder of Chosen, where he's deeply committed to environmental preservation and holistic wellness. This is a retreat center up in Sebastian, Florida. I've been there over 10 times. It's very, very magical. I'll be up there this upcoming weekend, which we'll share more about. But Tony's an amazing human being, and he's going to share some of his journey, some of his insights, and what he's working on right now with all of us today. So let's give a big round of applause for Tony Cho. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Wes. Thank you, Miami Made. Thank you all for being here today. It is a privilege and an honor. It's actually the 1-year anniversary since I spoke last time, which was on election day. It's a different election, different stakes, but equally interesting because I'm pretty apolitical and pretty not really focused on talking about religion and politics, which we will not talk about today, but I hope you all get out there and vote. But there's a lot of beautiful faces in here today, very diverse group of people, which for me makes me happy. That's one of the reasons why I decided to move to Miami almost a quarter of a century ago, and I started working in this very neighborhood. How many people here have been in Miami longer than 1 year? Raise your hand. Okay, that's good. How many people have been here longer than 5 years? Raise your hand. Okay, a little bit smaller group. How many people longer than 10 years? Raise your hand. Okay, we got some old school OGs in the house. How many people longer than 20 years? Wow, I think I've got 10 people. So the people have been here, like Unique and others, Fabian, who we used to work in Nightluck together. I don't know if Fabian bolted out for the next thing, but I've been in Miami most of my life, actually. I've traveled around the world. I was born 2.5 hours north of here on an interfaith ashram commune started by my grandmother in the 70s, who was doing interracial marriages and same-sex unions in Central Florida, while the KKK was burning crosses on our lawns and calling us weird names. And it was a very interesting place to be for a group of hippies that were studying breath work and meditation and yoga and a monastic lifestyle long before it was cool in Miami where everybody was doing it. This was not a cool thing back in the day in Central Florida. But again, I was born sleeping on the temple floor, sharing a bathroom, Navy showers with, dozens of people, and sitting in community every single day and night, eating and sharing all of our meals with 100, 150 people, and doing ritual together, and doing everything together, birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, deaths, all of those types of things. And so I was born in community, and I think that has been the foundation, that has really kind of set the course of my life. And I think the beautiful thing about Miami Made is that it's a beautiful community of entrepreneurs and people that all have some beautiful skill to offer. And that's the alchemy that gets created when we're all offering something and we're all working together and we're all elevating one another. And there's a magic that's created through that chemistry and through that alchemy of community, which Joe and Wes and many of you guys who are community builders here in Miami have been able to do. And every great movement in this world is started by a community. It can be a small community, then it grows. And this neighborhood was started by creatives and entrepreneurs and independent brands. And that's really what is beautiful about Miami, is that it has this unique flavor. It has this unique cultural flavor that is its biggest asset and its biggest legacy. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference. I think in the business world, this concept of being self-made is over-indexed, and people really love to feed their ego and talk about how I did this on my own, I did this by myself, and really nobody can do anything by themselves. Everybody has someone who's helped them along the way, or more than someone, usually a community, a small group of people, or a larger group of people that have supported you and your dreams and have believed in you. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's your biological family, does it? It's usually your soul family. It's usually that family that you've grown to be there for, and it's this relationship of reciprocity. And my work is largely focused on regeneration and regenerative living. I started out in the sustainability and green building movement many decades ago, really focused on green buildings and recycled materials, and we started in Wynwood 20-some years ago, the Green Building Resource Center, and we had like recycled countertops for developers, and we did all these things, efficient lighting, and people didn't give a shit. They were like, why am I going to spend more money to be sustainable? And it's not sexy, it's not inspiring, and so I started to really learn much more about the regenerative development movement, what regeneration means, giving back more than you take, reciprocity, being there, particularly in moments of challenge, in moments of hardship, and not just for the parties and the good times. I was a nightclub promoter in the 90s, and this was a magical time. And what was magical about that was also the community. It was a community of models and celebrities and hospitality people, but we all looked out for one another. And I think that's what made South Beach in the 90s so magical. Also, there was no Instagram. I think that helped a lot. Well, there was intimacy. We don't have intimacy anymore. Everything is out there in the open. You can't really do anything in private anymore because you don't know who's capturing, those moments. And so I think that's something that is really important if you want to have authentic relationships, is being able to have that intimacy and being raw and being real. And so that was a special time because we didn't have to pay celebrities to come to our nightclub. They wanted to be there because it was cool and because no one was capturing them doing naughty things. So that was, also a formula for magic, is creating environments where people feel safe and creating communities where people feel safe. And I think you guys have done a really good job, Joe, of creating a community. And I know your predecessors very well. And I was the co-founder of the Magic City Innovation District, which is a few blocks from here, which is one of the largest mixed-use approved developments in Miami that I got approved, I think, almost 8 years ago. And Zeze is there, and many kind of Miami institutions, have come from this co-creation of the creative class, which has emerged out of Miami over the last 10, 20 years, because when I was in South Beach, none of these neighborhoods existed. Little River wasn't even named. Little Haiti just got its name 5 years ago. I don't know if any of you guys know that. The Design District was a collection of empty warehouses, and it was very dicey and very sketchy. Wynwood was even more sketchy in the 80s. That was the headquarters of the Watts riots, and they actually closed the off-ramp from 95 in the 80s because there was so much violence, cars getting burned and people getting their stuff broken into. And so it's really interesting how these neighborhoods have evolved and people don't really understand the place. And I think that's why placemaking became so important to me, or place sourcing, instead of place taking. Many developers, come into an area with their notion of what a place should be, or how I'm going to help the local community, or who is the local community, and it ends up gentrifying or culturally misappropriating or pushing out the indigenous or the original or the authentic culture that exists in a place. And so I've dedicated my career first through Metro One, which is my commercial brokerage and investment firm that I started 20 years ago, really shaping and curating neighborhoods here in the urban core of Miami. People thought I was running a hip hop company when I said we were doing urban real estate, and they're like, what is that? What does that mean? And, really Miami was like a donut before the last 10, 15 years, where most people either lived in Miami Beach, Aventura, Coral Gables, but there was no residence in downtown. When I drive around and I look at Miami World Center and I see, women, with baby carriages, feeling safe on the streets and going to Anthropology, I was like, my, how this world has changed. And I used to come out of space at like 9, 10, 11, noon, it was not a pretty scene, And it's pretty amazing to see the transformation of this place, but it has all happened with community. It's all been through cultural tastemakers, the arts. What would Miami be without the arts? It would just be, beautiful people and fast cars and six-packs and, people popping champagne. But I remember the first time that Art Basel came here. The first year, I think it's over 20 years old, and it started in the convention center. But then it was like a mycelium, and it kind of took over the whole city, and then we started doing satellite fairs in the Design District and Wynwood and all over Miami, and I think that really had one of the biggest impacts in Miami's history, was really the transformation of Miami into a cultural hub, and not just a place that was fun in the sun where you could come and spend your money and and live a kind of superficial, carefree existence, but there were people with souls, and there was a lot of culture here. People cared about art. I think that was an important pivot moment. And Miami is like this organism that just keeps on evolving in such a beautiful way. And it's been really such an amazing experience over the last 25 years to witness the evolution of this city. And I always said, a lot of people don't like that English is not the first language in Miami. Me personally, I love that. I love coming and feeling like I'm in another country, or I'm being enriched by other cultures. I do speak Spanish. My late wife is Colombian. I've spent a lot of time in Cuba and South America, and I love these cultures, and I think that only enriches and makes Miami the place that it is. And so I just feel very blessed to have been part of this trajectory of Miami, and really kind of how the community has defined that. And so my work evolved from Metro One. I created Metro One 20 years ago, and we did about $4 billion of non-institutional transactions. The butcher, the baker, the barber, the heart and soul of Main Street. We were there in Wynwood in the early days, and my friend Nina Arias, who was a curator, joined our real estate brokerage. She's one of our first licensees and one of our first agents, and she started the Wynwood Arts District Association, which was helping artists secure walls and get support from property owners, and that was kind of like the beginning of Wynwood, with this kind of dance between property owners and artists and creatives. And then Instagram emerged, and people started taking selfies in front of these murals, and then we basically catapulted Wynwood to international stardom, and the values started soaring. I was buying properties at $10 a foot that I sold at $1,000, $1,100 a foot. These are like tech multiples. This is not what you see in real estate. And I was 26. I was like, this is cool. I'm making money. It's great. And people finally believed me, because there's a thin line between insanity and genius, right? And people thought I was insane that I was investing in these old warehouses in Wynwood, where it was unsafe, and we're next to Overtown, and people would get their cars broken into, and someone was held up at gunpoint at Joey's one time. And I said, listen, that's a reflection of where our society is. We can't just, put ourselves in gated communities and think that we're going to separate ourselves from poverty or separate ourselves from problems. They're not going to go away, and I think that's the beautiful thing of what's happened with the emergence of the urban core, and it's happened in a way that's very inclusive and that's very creative, and that's allowed many people to make their marks and emerge as artists, creatives, small business owners. We helped to bring Zach the Baker to Wynwood, and look at Zach the Baker. He's redefined hospitality and food and beverage in Miami for the last 15 years. Panther Coffee. These are the heart and soul of these neighborhoods. These are the entrepreneurs. These are the small businesses. And it's through these small businesses and entrepreneurs that we can revitalize these communities. It's not the big corporations, it's the small businesses. And so that's really what I became passionate about early on in my career, is helping to incubate, accelerate, and support small businesses like Plant the Future, which just opened up a cafe very close to here. They were paying $2,000 a month for rent on Northeast 2nd Avenue about 15 years ago. And they were there for 5 years. And then the landlord, their lease was up, raised their rent to $20,000, from $2,000 to $20,000. And they were the heart and soul of Northeast 2nd Avenue. You'd go in there, it was like a botanical garden. It was like a museum. And it was really special because they were creating community. At the end of the day, all these small businesses, each of you as entrepreneurs, your concentric circles of networks and community is really what is creating culture and really what bringing people together. And that's what moves cities, that's what moves neighborhoods, that's what moves businesses. You look at any successful business and they've been able to create a community around it. And so I always believe that being part of a community leader, a member of a community, and really helping one another was really the way that you could be of service, and really the way that you could make something happen and you could make an impact in your community in a positive way. And I believe strongly that's what we've been able to do by supporting these small businesses and even the small investors, the new investors. So when Plant the Future told us that their rent was raised 10 times, I said, well, it's clear you guys need to buy a building. And so we took them to Little River on 82nd Street, and I showed them this building of this old Subway subs place that was really famous, and it was for sale. And they're like, wow, this is so expensive, we're not going to be able to afford this. So I introduced them to a banker that helped them get an SBA loan. And they ended up purchasing this property, and it became the best investment of their lives as a family. It changed their family. They were able to build wealth, and now that's their most valuable asset of their company. And they just opened a cafe, and they're doing incredible things, and they're bringing biophilic design to Miami, and they've done the One Hotel, and they've done projects all over the world as homegrown small business community leaders, and they're bringing community together. They do events there. And so you have all these kind of amazing entrepreneurs and creatives in Miami that not all of them have a Tony Cho or a mentor in their lives. And so I think that when we talk about community-made versus self-made, you know, I grew up sleeping on the temple floor. I don't come from a lot of money. I went to school at Northwestern. I ended up dropping out of school. I became a nightclub promoter in the 90s in the South Beach because I wanted to be independent. I wanted to do it on my own. Independence is different than having a community support you, right? It's a different kind of concept. Yes, you can be independent from your parents. You can be freed from other people's expectations, but you can't do it alone. And I've learned that over and over and over again in my life, that we're not here alone and we don't have to be alone. And there's so many people that are going through the exact same thing that you're going through. The challenges, not believing in themselves, falling down like we all do. We all learn from our mistakes and not necessarily from our successes. And I'm publishing a book called Generation Regeneration, co-designing the cities of the future through regenerative placemaking. And it's really this connection between nature, culture, and community. Those are the pillars of regenerative placemaking. And really, community is at the top of the list. And you know, we're doing a project in Jacksonville now that's going to be 830 mixed income units, turning a food desert into a food forest. It's called the Phoenix Arts and Innovation District. It's in an underserved community in North Springfield in downtown Jacksonville, which has been largely neglected, in a city where the life expectancy between an average black community and average white communities is 20-year difference because of the food desert issues, the crime, the violence, the drugs, the lack of mentorship. And it just shows you how stark the inequality is, you know, within these communities. And it's our responsibility to bridge that gap. And so we're doing that in Jacksonville. Only small businesses, only independent brands. And it's incredible because I always say that success moves at the speed of trust. And there's a lot of distrust between people, with governments, with religion, with all kinds of things. And if you can develop and cultivate trust, you can accomplish anything. And that's what's happening in Jacksonville. We were awarded $5.5 million from the city of Jacksonville to adaptively repurpose these buildings to help incubate and accelerate small businesses. We were given $350,000 from DeSantis, who said that he vowed to veto all after-school programs, but not ours. He approved that program. So it just shows you when you're doing the right thing and when you care about the community and the community is behind you, guess what? You can accomplish anything because it's what they want. It's not what you want. It's co-designing, co-creation. And that's really important because who's to say that I know what the community of Jacksonville wants? I live in Miami. I'm not a native Jacksonian. I'm not from Jacksonville. So it was really through years of deep listening and co-creating and co-designing and workshops with that community that taught us what were the real needs. And so that project actually runs itself because it's community-led. It's not Tony Cho-led. It's not even Future of Cities-led. It's community-led. And so I've learned a lot because it wasn't the same in Wynwood. We had a lot of pushback, even though it was a partnership with the city of Miami, from the Overtown community. What were they getting out of it? And when we tried to entitle Magic City right here in Little Haiti, you know, there was a lot of folks that were not necessarily in alignment with a vision to build 8 million square feet and what's being done for the community, etc. Despite a lot of efforts of us reaching out, you know, and working with community. And then there's corruption. You know, there's a lot of corruption in community, and there's a lot of people who claim to be things that they're not and claim that they represent people that they don't. And so you also have to navigate, you know, that non-linear path to, you know, creating coherence, you know, with people and with community. And so over the last 2 decades, I've had the opportunity to look at all the spectrums of projects that are fully supported, community efforts that are fully community-led and that are authentic, and everything in between. And again, I think the biggest lessons that I've learned are from the failures and not from the successes. That's really where you have to really look at yourself deeply and ask yourself, what is my purpose? You know, what do I really want out of this? And what is going to bring me the most amount of joy? Which leads me to, this is a business entrepreneurship group, and I told Joe, you know, I'm in the middle of a grieving process. 4.5, almost 5 months ago, I lost my beloved soulmate, my wife, Jimena Carolina Castillo. We were together for 17 years. We were married on 11/11/11 by my grandmother, and she had a heroic battle with breast cancer that ended on June the 17th in this lifetime. And it was 11 days after her 47th birthday. 4 + 7 = 11. And it's really interesting the amount of mystical experiences and connection to spirit and to the other worlds that have been happening since then from people all over the world. She had a very big impact. And for those of you who follow my Substack, I wrote an article, a love letter to her called Soft Power, about her soft power, because she was very exquisitely beautiful physically, but also had a very pure heart, and many people would call her an angel, and just this woman that was so present in every moment. And she had such an impact, and she didn't really say much. You know, she didn't have to say much. She just, her presence had this incredible calming capacity because she was so grounded and was so kind and was so compassionate and just had this soft power. And we're in the middle, actually. This is, I think today's Tuesday, right? Day 4 of 11 days of honoring her from Day of the Dead and to 11/11, which is our 14-year wedding anniversary. And it's just been beautiful the way that the community has shown up in support of me and of each other and kind of rewriting the script on death and dying, because in our society and in most societies, we don't talk about death. We avoid it. We try to biohack away from it, around it. We think death is a disease, but death is the most natural thing that is going to happen to each and every one of us. And the sooner that we can embrace our own mortality and our own death, the more fully we can live in this moment and fully appreciate the gift and the treasure that we have, and let all the stupidity and the pettiness and the insignificant things kind of go to the wayside. And it really helps you get in your purpose very quickly if you look at things in terms of that this life is finite. We have a limited amount of time. The gift of breath, the gift of existence, the gift of this marvelous, majestic planet and this nature, and the fact that our bodies, do so many amazing things. We give birth, we have children, we heal ourselves. There's so many things that we do, but it's very short, this life that we have, and it's very precious. And are you squandering your life? Are you focusing on things that are insignificant? Or are you making every moment count? And that's what Jimena taught me. And I think it's very applicable to the life of an entrepreneur, and very applicable to business. Because what is the purpose of business if it's not to bring impact in a positive way to your life and to the lives around you and the people that you're helping? And so it was when Joe asked me to speak today, which is election day, a year from when I last spoke here. I'm in the middle of this process of grieving. I'm actually heading up to my retreat center tonight. I told Joe, and I have a whole delegation of indigenous leaders here from Colombia and from the Brazilian Amazon that were in a process of doing rituals. And I said, you know what? I think it is important for me to be here. It is important to share. And I think that it is a relevant topic around community-made versus self-made, and these days of honoring, because to my wife and to me, life is a ritual. Life is sacred, and everything is sacred. And I think we've gotten away from that, and we've just basically 5 minutes? Okay, good. Wow, that went by pretty quickly. I could talk for another 5 hours. No, just kidding. But getting back to the sacredness of our life and of our time, like that is our most precious asset we have. How are you spending your time? And with whom are you spending your time? That really matters most in this. And in this process, she actually got to dictate how she wanted to go, who she wanted around her, what set list was playing, what songs, what ritual was happening. Our shamans were there chanting medicine music for 5-6 hours. The sun was setting on the ocean, and she got to dictate. She did not want to be in a hospital. She got to dictate how she got to exit this plane and transcend in a way that really showed us all so much. And I got the privilege to walk her home in such a beautiful way. And so I just ask you guys to think about, have you thought about your last moments and your legacy? And have you thought about those you want around you, and what you would be remembered for, and what your last breaths would be like? And if you haven't, I strongly encourage you to do so and take some moments, because I believe that it will help you live a better life, and a more fulfilled and a more purposeful life. And it'll help you have deeper relationships. My wife would have 5-hour conversations with friends, wouldn't worry about the time, would be so present. And I think we're robbing ourselves, and technology is robbing ourselves of presence, because we're always thinking of what's going on, going to happen in the future, and what happened in the past, and not living in the moment. And the moment is all we have. The moment is everything. And from Ram Dass to be here now, to every great spiritual teacher over millennia and many, many, many years, that is the most important, is be present, live in that moment, and show up for your community, not only in the fun times and the times of joy, but in the times of challenge and the times of sorrow. That's what really makes us true community members is actually being there when it counts the most. And that's what I've seen in this most difficult, challenging time of my life, is how my community and our community has shown up for each other. And that's a reflection of us and how we showed up for them. And so think about that, in the way that you live your life and the communities that you are part of and how you show up for one another. And you live in the moment, be present, and show up for your community. And magic will unfold, because what you give comes back 1,000%. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
We'll do a couple minutes.
Okay, sure.
We're going to do like a quick 5 minutes, maybe 2, 3, 4 questions tops. Any questions for Tony?
Hi, Tony.
Hi, Sunil. How are you?
Probably don't know me, but by the way, Tony's humble. He comes from a beautiful divine lineage. His grandmother, Ma Jaya, and follower of Baba Ni Karoli. I have visited your ashram so many times. It's such a beautiful place. The Kashi ashram in Florida, if you guys ever get a chance. This is, last month there was a little bit quiet, was right before the COVID. I've been visiting there since in the 90s. Plus, we had a parallel community that was created in Yogaville in Virginia. So we had a lot of back and forth. But the question I have for you, which you brought up really amazing with all this development work you're doing, where do you manage a fine line between gentrification and development in community?
Thanks for that question. And yeah, I grew up on the ashram, and now next door, we ended up, after my grandmother passed in 2012, the ashram sold some of the community center, the retreat center, and the senior care facility. So me and my wife ended up buying it, those properties, and reimagining them as Chosen Center for Regenerative Living, which is all nature-based, regenerative agriculture, conservation, community and retreat center next to the ashram. So you've got both, which is really interesting. And this weekend, actually, we're hosting a weekend of remembrance for Jimena. The rooms are sold out, but we've got an artisan market called the Love Market in the Love Garden there, where I got married, 14 years ago. And we have 40 vendors, live musicians, and all kinds of stuff. There'll probably be 1,000 people there. So if you're interested in coming this weekend, you can see Amy Kay in the back. She's got her hand up. And if you're interested to learn more about our development projects in Jacksonville and Portugal, we have a Golden Visa Fund in Portugal. You can talk to Brendan, who's right there. Brendan McKeon, Professor McKeon.
And real quick, I'll be there this weekend as well. I'll be there all day on Sunday. It is really a magical experience. There's kayak tours, there's boat tours, there's a food forest. You can get a tour of the land. You can just enjoy farm-to-table food. The music is really special. It's an overall experience. 2.5-hour drive, and you feel like you're in a different world. I highly recommend checking it out this Sunday. I'll be there, and we'll hang out.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. And we call it a Florida safari. We're in a 22,000-acre nature preserve. But back to your question, how do you deal with gentrification? And I think the best way to deal with gentrification is that you allow the community to co-design its best outcomes, and that you really work closely with the community, because no one can be the arbiter of culture or of design or of what's right and wrong. There's no what's right and wrong. The first thing that Tony Goldman taught me about when you're coming and you're trying to revitalize or be part of a revitalization of a neighborhood is you've got to make it safe and clean first. So that's the first thing that you want to do. You want to light up the area. You want to make it safe. If people don't feel safe, then they're not going to come to the area. So safety is first. The next step is to work very closely with the community and co-design, what are the needs of that community. A developer doesn't know instinctively. They need to take the efforts to spend the time, deeply listen to the community and understand what are the needs and what are the desires, and then do the best that you can to integrate that information and allow that to emerge. And I think that that's happened in many ways in Miami. You've seen it. I mean, Wynwood was a lot of co-creation. Little Haiti has been the same way. And you guys should check out our Phoenix Arts and Innovation District in Jacksonville, because that is purely community led. They decided on everything from the murals to the paint colors to the programming to the needs and the courses that they want to take. So it's really a beautiful thing. Thank you for the question. Anybody else? My man back in my old school nightclub buddy. You could never get into any of his parties back in the day. It was very exclusive, by the way.
So nice to see you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Unique. So I'm just one because that's time I was here, right? Sure. So thank you for doing this. 2 questions. How did you get involved in Wynwood? Was Tony Goldman the first guy down to Wynwood and started developing it? And also tell me about Magic City, because you are Asian.
Thank you for that question. So I came to Wynwood in 2000, 2001, before Tony Goldman had come and started buying properties, and there were a few people there. There was a broker named Larry Mizrak, who's no longer there, a guy named David Lombardi, who was one of the first brokers and developers there, and again, Nina Arias. And that's when we started to put together, the Wynwood Arts District Association. And then 2003, 2004, Joey Goldman, Tony Goldman's son, started to come, and we were helping them and the other brokers find properties. And then he really, I would say, accelerated the growth of Wynwood, because he had a lot of experience in Soho before and in South Beach before that, and really understood placemaking and really understood community development and really had a connection with the arts. And so I think he did a really amazing job of bringing in also the international artists, not only the local artists, and which was a very good balance between the local artists and the international artists. But what I saw quickly in Wynwood, even though the mission and the vision was aligned, I saw that the small businesses like Plant the Future and Zach the Baker and others were getting pushed out of the neighborhood because private equity groups from New York were coming in and scooping things up and squeezing the soul out of Main Street. And so I started to, hold this inquiry around, is there a way to revitalize neighborhoods without gentrifying, without pushing out the heart and the soul and the creative juice? And that was what kind of led me to want to do Magic City, which was the Magic City Trailer Park, which was a tourist camp for French Canadians back in the day. And after Papa Doc and the whole Haitian situation of the 80s, many Haitians moved to the area, and so there was this vibrant Haitian culture there, and I felt like it was the next area after Wynwood that had the opportunity to revitalize and elevate this culture, not only of the Haitians, but of the whole Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean diaspora that was there, that was really beautiful, that could be highlighted, the Bahamians and the Jamaicans, and really this culture and the multicolor buildings that you now see on Northeast 2nd Avenue that has been turned into a district. And so we started assembling land. I brought in Guy La Liberté from Cirque du Soleil and others to kind of co-create and put together a vision, and we got a train stop dedicated to that location, renovated all the buildings. And then I exited my interest about 4 years ago and haven't been involved other than in leasing. And that's where I took my resources to do Jacksonville and reinvest in Chosen and now do Future of Cities Portugal. Because really what I'm trying to do is demonstrate different versions. In Miami we have the Climate Innovation Hub, which is a net zero aspirational community center where we do events. We just had the Ajo Festival there on Saturday, which was incredible. We have a wellness facility there. We're about to do a biophilic learning center there, all on biophilic design. We're gonna have food and beverage opening there. So that's like what a community hub looks like in an urban center. Chosen is a rural kind of eco-resort, bioregional hub demonstration model, and Jacksonville is an entire neighborhood of how you can, in a regenerative placemaking way, revitalize a whole neighborhood. And then the Portugal Golden Visa is a financial tool that can help support all of that, but can also help bring regenerative placemaking to the world. We're going to be launching a course next year on how to do regenerative placemaking, because everybody can be a regenerative placemaker. Every entrepreneur and every business owner, and it all has to do with community, culture, and nature. So everybody here can be a participant, an active participant in creating that type of regenerative community that we all want to live in. So stay tuned for that.
Awesome. All right, one more round of applause for Tony Cho. Brother, you're amazing.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you, Hyman. Have a beautiful week, you all.
Yeah, thank you so much, brother. All right.
Thank you.
All right, guys, that was awesome. I hope you come to Sebastian on Sunday to the Chosen Retreat Center. It's really special. I'll be there. It'll be a lot of fun.